Hey, what's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kagas with you. We are live on clickorlando.com, the new 6 mobile app, also on YouTube and on Facebook Live. If you have any questions, I will get to those. We're going to go over some of the latest data. If you missed the 11 o'clock advisory, I'm going to show you that. Of course, the next track update we get from the National Hurricane Center going to be at 5 o'clock. We'll get a 2 o'clock intermediate update since we do have watches up for Jamaica and into the Cayman Islands. So we'll get that intermediate one in likely less than 20 minutes with a new position and intensity update. There's a Hurricane Hunter plane in there right now. We'll take a look what that is finding and also take a look at some of the, I don't want to call it a model trend yet, but certainly there was a change earlier if you were with us. We're going to be watching to see, and as we get deeper into today and more data from those Hurricane Hunter aircraft, we are going to start to put a little more confidence in those models. We were cautioning over the past couple of days they were likely going to bounce. And yesterday and the day before they were. We will see that start to likely hone in on something, though, shortly as we move into the next several days. And again, one of the things we saw was a slight westward shift, not only in the models, but also in the track. And again, the track is not set in stone, especially as we move towards that day 4 at day 5 period. One of the things we're watching in the short term, and of course, then I'll show you the cone when it comes to Florida, and still most, really like 90% of the state of Florida is still in the cone. What has been happening recently, though, is the center of circulation is trying to develop. This brings about uncertainty point number 1. It's where does the dominant center get a firm hold on the storm? We're watching the cluster of thunderstorms. I'll show you the satellite in a second, versus where the actual low-level center is. And with the Hurricane Hunters now being in there, we're going to get a better idea so that the models have something to latch onto finally, and that's going to give us a much clearer image here on where this thing could go. But the one thing we noticed last time with the last Hurricane Hunter update was that the storm was moving more south of west. At 11 o'clock, it kind of moved back up north a little bit to go due west. So that's going to matter in the short term because the further west it goes before it starts turning north, that's going to tell us, again, if it's going to decide to take the outside track here of the cone or the inside runner. And, of course, giant implications, ramifications, depending upon where this goes. You see again that slightward west jog, and again, as really as we get out into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, a lot of this still subject to change. And again, we are going to fine-tune this over the next 24 to 48 hours. Keep on saying that. Really, by tomorrow night and into Monday morning, we are going to have several good model runs with, when I mean good model runs, it's with much better data because there are not only really nonstop missions into this storm from the U.S. Air Force and NOAA into the storm. We're also increasing balloon launches in the lower 48, which is going to have more sampling of the steering environment that Ian will eventually get into post-Cuba to determine if this could lift north, could stall out in the Gulf of Mexico, or as the current track holds, to kind of shoot back in to Central Florida. We want none of those options, of course, but unfortunately, once you get a storm into this area, it has to hit land. So the thing we hope for the most is we get some wind shear involved as it gets further north into the Gulf of Mexico. If it does take door number 2, which is to stall out over the Gulf, there is the opportunity for that to happen, for some wind shear to be introduced from the thing that is eventually going to lift it up. I'll show you that in a second. Again, here's the latest on Ian as we wait for the 2 p.m. advisory. This is from 11 o'clock. The pressure down to 1,003 millibars. Moving west now at about 15 miles an hour, and we're going to watch to see where the Hurricane Hunters have found the center. Wind still at 45 miles an hour. It's going to take a minute to kind of gather itself after it was beat up by a lot of wind shear, and that wind shear was courtesy of what was Hurricane Fiona, still a very strong post-tropical system now well into Canada. If you saw some of the video from that, Canada just got absolutely decimated by part of that system. One of the strongest storms to ever hit Canada in its history, especially on the Atlantic side. But, of course, we are concerned about that. I want to show you a close-up view again, and we're going to see changes. We always talk about, especially when it comes to the first cone, because typically we don't have a ton of good data ingested into those models just yet. That's something that changes, though, very, very nicely once we get into these routine, or these almost minute by minute here, as these Hurricane Hunter planes get off. I'll show you their schedule. They're going to be busy for the next couple of days. But yesterday, just for instance, and again, when we're looking at the cone, we're looking at the whole cone and not just right down the center, because the cone forecast, the center could travel anywhere in here. So what this forecast error shows is that the center of circulation could end up going toward Fort Lauderdale, or toward the Big Bend, toward Tallahassee, even towards the Panhandle or Alabama. Now, that seems like a very widespread range, and believe me, it is. We know that, but there's going to be a lot of change over the next 24 to 48 hours again, where we will no doubt fine-tune that. And then once that becomes a little more clear, again, from the extra balloon launches on land, and when I say balloon launches, weather balloon launches, and the hurricane hunters, then we'll be able to start to pinpoint impacts for every town, every county in Central Florida. So that'll be something to really look forward to, really, as we get into Monday, because if we were to be impacted by this system, by Ian, it wouldn't be until maybe starting to feel a little bit of the impacts on Tuesday, but then really into Wednesday and Thursday. So we still have a ton of time, thankfully, to get ready for this if it does decide to kind of curve in, as some things suggest. Now, one of the things that we are going to look for is how some of these models are initializing here. And before, we had a few models kind of north of where the hurricane hunters found the center. So, I mean, that's exactly what we've been talking about, kind of garbage in, garbage out. If the computer forecast doesn't know where the storm is initially, it's not going to know where it is at the end of its life. So that is one of the things we are watching. It looks like we have some of those models trying to grasp now, thanks to the Hurricane Hunter data, where the center is. And you see there's a consensus towards extreme western Cuba, certainly even a shift in the short term. But as we watch the center come together, the first question is, where does this start to make the turn north? A quicker turn north takes it in here. A more westerly track and a slower turn to the north could take it up into the Yucatan Channel. So all things that we are watching, all of this water is super, super hot, and it's super, super deep hot water as well. So it's jet fuel for a hurricane. Really, the intensity not in question here. We're expecting this to rapidly intensify really around the Cayman Islands. I see on YouTube we have a few people tuning in from the Cayman Islands, and we are under a hurricane warning there. So make sure that you are preparing for a rapidly intensifying hurricane in the Cayman Islands, more like tropical storm conditions on Jamaica. You see the center way down here, some of those outer bands, though, and some thunderstorms associated with that going to push into Jamaica. Now, taking the models out further, you do see that there is a higher spread in the models, as to be expected with this, because of course, we're getting further out in time. There's more things. And as we get Ian past Cuba or into the Gulf of Mexico, there are other steering currents in play that could dictate, okay, is this going to stall out in the Gulf of Mexico? That is a scenario, which may end up being the best case scenario for everybody involved, because if it does sit there, it will get really, really, really strong in the middle of the Gulf, but then there is at least an opportunity for wind shear to kind of knock it down a little bit and some drier air to get involved. So that may be the best option here, because, again, there's really no way out to land. The other option would be to follow the more easterly models, and that is closer to what the European model solution has had the last couple of days. If you followed that, that's with a stronger dip in the jet stream over New England to kind of pull it across the Florida Peninsula, which would be the worst case scenario out of this deal anyway for Central Florida. Or it can continue to go to the west and maybe head towards the Panhandle or Alabama. And again, I know that is a very wide range of options, believe me, but again, as we get the better data in, we are going to be fine-tuning that, and you will know how this could impact you again as early as Monday and we'll continue to fine tune that as there's always those wiggle room, especially with these big hurricanes. I know that you guys that have lived in Florida long enough know that these things really, really wobble, and wobbles matter. So that'll be something, again, as we get closer to the event to try to pinpoint. Christina on Facebook says, can't find water anywhere. And Tiffany mentions back that maybe try some of the gas stations. So, all right, Care on YouTube is asking, is it going to impact the Keys? So as we get into Monday, we could have impacts on the Keys, but you see here these spaghetti plots, as we call them, because it look like spaghetti. I've seen the memes. They're pretty funny. But in all seriousness, you see that the center of most of the major models here keeps the center away from the Keys now. Yesterday, we had some bending in. So we're going to watch that trend, but certainly the storm is wide, so impact's likely going to be felt even way out here, even if the storm comes through the Yucatan Channel and then out into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Jeffrey asks on YouTube, is Mississippi still a possibility? It is still a possibility. So I would no doubt not let your guard down, even though there are no models heading here yet. We do have some of the latest GFS American model runs heading very, very close into the Alabama, Mississippi area. So really, Mississippi is not off the table here. Carlene asks, is it going to impact Jamaica? We are under a tropical storm watch, so it is going to impact it, not intensely, so to speak. Still, though, tropical storm conditions will be likely on the island, so prepare for a strong tropical storm at the very least there, with some wiggle room. But again, for the most part, the worst of it is going to stay off to your south. Okay, so what I want to do here, I want to show you what is exactly steering Ian and show you why we still have some of the differences in the models. Short term, it's because we need to get Ian consolidated. And obviously we don't want Ian to get consolidated because that would mean it would be able to start to strengthen, which is obviously something we do not want. But as that happens, we'll be able to determine here just where this is going to start to turn north a little bit. And one of the reasons that it's going to turn north is because of this trough, this dip in the jet stream. Ian, which is down here, is going to kind of feel this tug, and this is going to pull the storm. Now, this is the European solution. The GFS is a little weaker with, not the storm. So I want to be clear about that, not weaker with the storm. This is likely going to be a very intense hurricane. We're just hoping it doesn't really be intense at the time of landfall. But you see this dip in the jet stream, and as it kind of blows across the mid-Atlantic, it also kind of pulls Ian across Central and South Florida. Now, you'll notice all of these winds here kind of going crazy. This is something that we would like. And I mentioned about the potential for at least one of the three outcomes would be for Ian to kind of miss its ride on this little jet stream here, which, again, will be a good thing for Central Florida. Maybe not so great for the Panhandle and for Mississippi and Alabama. But I think the best of all three worlds would be for it to kind of get hung up in here, and you see all that wind. That's a lot of wind shear. That's not good for the storm. That's good for us. We don't know exactly how much yet it would tend to weaken that storm, but any kind of wind shear or dry air, because there's going to be a cold front draped there, is certainly going to help to do something to it, at least knock it down. So that's something that we are going to be watching very, very closely. And again, we will get much more on that as these hurricane hunter missions continue. And as we sample that dip in the jet stream better, there's additional balloon launches going off across the country. It's a huge undertaking here from the National Weather Service and United States government, with the Air Force flying in, NOAA flying in, and then those balloon launches going up from the National Weather Service, all going into giving us better data to ingest into the models for meteorologists to interpret. So look for things to get a little more clear over the next 24 to 48 hours. That's going to be the timeline where things start to happen, where things start to nail down a little bit. And by that time, Ian would have made the turn north, and we'll be able to really gauge, okay, is it going to go over the Yucatan Channel or more over west central Cuba? And I agree, and it may not even be certain until more like Monday. Aaron Ass said on YouTube. Let's see. Some people were saying about some of the things that they can't find in stores already. I hate that that's the case, obviously. And I hope that you guys can find stuff if you need stuff. One of the things here, and I'm going to show you where the United States Air Force is right now. They are in the storm, sampling it, looking for the center, looking for what it's doing. That is United States Air Force, the call sign there, Teal 72. What is going on, really, what is en route now is going to be NOAA 49. This is a tiny aircraft. It's the Gulfstream, which flies higher than the NOAA planes and the Air Force C-130. And this is going to gather some vital information about what the environment is. Asking some people on Facebook and on the YouTube Live to see the track, and I will show you that momentarily. I want to show you first, real quick, since I'm on the Hurricane Hunter thing. This is the United States Air Force flying in here, and right now they're doing their little triangles, if you will, to find the center and to see. And again, it really still not organized. It's looking better. Again, unfortunately, healthier, but with some of the outflow here, it shows that the shear at least has let up. But they're looking for the center, and that's going to be eventually vital or critical to the forecast. So real quick, I am going to go back now, and there we go. 2 o'clock advisory just coming in. So this is hot off the press. We are looking at this in real time. Again, it's not a new track just yet. This is going to be just a position and intensity update. And really nothing has changed. It has increased forward speed by 1 mile per hour, still moving west. The intensity still at 45 miles per hour. Craig says on YouTube Live, please think about taking your lawn furniture in. And that's the perfect thing that you can start doing on a great weather weekend, no matter where you are. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do that, but start thinking about doing the things that take a couple of extra days to get it done. And if you did it for nothing, then that's a positive. Again, we will know more by tomorrow night, and then really as we move into Monday. So I'll show you again a close-up view here of the track if you're interested in extreme western Cuba through the Cayman Islands and then moving through Florida. So somebody asked about the Keys before, and we are on the outer side of the range of possibilities, at least for the center. But again, impacts are well beyond the cone. And that's what again, that we are going to be watching to. A lot of people watching from the West Coast of Florida. And again, it's still too early to tell where this goes. We definitely don't like this scenario at all, where basically the entire state of Florida is the probabilistic strike here for Ian. But again, there's still a range of outcomes that could send it into the Panhandle, on the west coast of Florida, down through the Keys, and then across the state back out into the Atlantic. That will be fine-tuned, again, once we get into tomorrow and then Monday morning. Again, 24 to 48 hours, we are going to know more as the steering currents. Somebody mentions on YouTube Live, not good for storm surge. The west coast of Florida and the Panhandle are awful for storm surge because of the shelf and the water table there. It's a very shallow leadoff, so storm surge is amplified there. So any of these will be disastrous for storm surge on the west coast of Florida. That's one thing that we are watching, at least on a local point. Jack is asking on YouTube Live if it is a Cat 2 or Cat 3 when it gets to Florida. And right now it's forecast to be a Cat 2. And that is one of the byproducts of the forecast shifting a little bit to the west and north a little bit, getting into some wind shear. Okay, so not only, I'm not rooting for this to hit anybody, and I want you guys to, I want to be clear about that. The further west this goes, though, the better opportunity it is to run into a poor environment once it gets up into the North Gulf Coast. So in a situation where we're looking at Michael was just a runaway. There was really nothing to steer it. It went right into the Panhandle. Here we're talking about an upper level dip in the jet stream that is going to inflict not only its steering strength to it, but as it does that, it is also going to inflict some wind shear and dry air on the storm. So it's not going to be completely perfect conditions once it gets into the North Gulf of Mexico. So a lot of things to watch. Somebody said it's not better to wait until the last minute to prepare. It's better to prepare than not need to do anything. Again, if you have the big preps to do, and somebody said that on YouTube Live, if you have prep that takes a couple of days, you should start now. And then yeah, I'm not sure. No, the path did change a little bit. Sorry, I'm just reading up. Certainly, all of those things are on the table for those that are putting all your thoughts into the YouTube live chat. Yeah, I know people are talking about the water on Facebook Live. Just reading some of the comments here. Somebody asking Valerie on YouTube Live if Central Alabama should be concerned. It's on the outside of probabilities, but certainly it's not completely out of the woods, so I would be vigilant in this, especially with some of the later trends. We don't know how exactly it's going to impact Hernando just yet. That stuff is going to become a little more evident as we move into Monday, some of those impacts. Yeah, so no, Jeffrey brings up the GFS it does have an Alabama, Mississippi landfall. That's the American GFS, so it doubled down. The Euro does have it going more south. So I'm reading some of these comments on our YouTube page. And somebody's asking on Facebook here, Naples is not out of the woods. We are still in the cone. That is in the realm of possibilities, for sure. Again, we'll know more on Monday. And then Gina is asking on Facebook Live, models are starting to look like it's going to make landfall in the Panhandle. So there has been a shift in the models, okay? We look at why, and we just showed you the steering currents as to why that could be the case. We wait to see now that we have better data thanks to the hurricane hunters to see if this is going to be a trend. So the next couple of model runs that come out in the next hour or two move through. Jake is asking about the Euro. The Euro does have an updated model, and it has started to cave back to the to the American. The Euro does not stay South Florida. That has since updated, and it's more to the west. It showed South Florida yesterday. So just some things to keep in mind. Remember, guys, that models are not gospel. They are guidance. And those, though, will get better as we get better data from the hurricane hunters. Alrighty, guys. Meteorologist Samara Kokinos is going to be in later on tonight. She's going to be with you at around 5 o'clock. She's going to be pinpointing that. Sean, I agree. It could even go stronger than that because it'll go gangbusters in the Gulf. We just hope that it can kind of peter itself out before it hits land. That's one of the options, at least get a little weaker than that. But again, all that is up in the air. We're going to get much better data tonight and into tomorrow. There's no reason to cancel any plans or anything like that. I see a lot of the questions asking about that. But it's important to know that none of this is set in stone just yet. And we will know a lot more about the potential path of this system over the next 2 days. Somebody asking stronger than Irma. It would be very hard for that to become stronger than Irma because Irma is one of the strongest ever to be in the Atlantic Basin. So let's hope not. But the water is very, very warm, and the environment, at least in the short term, is very, very favorable. Again, rapid intensification is expected in and around the Cayman Islands through the Yucatan Channel. So that's Bradenton, Florida. We're in the cone. Be on the lookout. This should all be out of here by Friday night. That's being a little conservative. You see there by 8 o'clock, it should be through at least part of Central Florida there. Yeah, I don't know why you're putting a frowny face for that, though. Fort Myers is in the cone, but the trends are away from Fort Myers. We're going to watch to see if that continues. Same deal for Bradenton. Troy, we are in the cone. Impacts are possible. Not set in stone, though. So, again, moral of the story, don't cancel any plans just yet because there is the same amount of probability as there is for this to be buzzsaw right through Central Florida. We could literally have a light breeze through the peninsula. Okay, so I want to be clear about that. We're going to know more once we move into Sunday night and especially Monday. Angela's asking if the eye hits the Panhandle, will Tampa get any impacts? Depending upon how big the storm gets after the turn. So that's something that we're going to have to wait and see once we get, once it makes that turn and really once it starts to undergo once it starts building itself and all that stuff. Far inland, I would say Mississippi, Alabama, and then kind of curving up through the mid-Atlantic is a possibility. So, again, all those things. I'm getting one question on Facebook Live. Should the Carolinas be preparing? It's a wait and see, especially for the Carolinas. We're beyond 5 days there, so you've got a lot of time. Ross is asking about another disturbance. Facebook Live YouTube Live is lighting up. It's all dependent upon the strength of your windows. Again, if you live on the coast, you should think about it. Again, if this looks like it's going to be coming in your direction, and again, we still have a couple of days to that. No, thank you, Craig. I think that's the best way. Just kind of breathe. We're still in that watch mode. I know it's stressful being in the cone for a lot of folks, and it's certainly you don't like to see this, but again, a lot can change, and I know that we will get better data from the hurricane hunters. So thank them. They are the brave ones that are dropping all the instruments and all that stuff. And yes, to answer the last question here, as I'm losing my voice, this storm is at least trying to show a little more of a western jog. At least the models are. So we're going to be watching if that's a trend. That's something that we are going to keep an eye on. Yep, 5 p.m. for the next broadcast. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to keep on watching this for you. And again, stay safe. Be calm. Just think about what you would do if, again, we get a little more confidence that this is coming in. Florida is likely impacted. We're just going to narrow down where over the next couple of days. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you tuning in. Again, be safe and be nice to each other out there. It's crazy. See you guys.